We have a last-minute guest, and I'm really happy that he could get on. His name is Zakk Whitman. He's an independent researcher, ancient history/wisdom. Ancient history-wisdom.co.uk is his site. Co-director of the Ancient Wisdom Foundation. He also wrote a book, Thesis of Angels, and he joins us here right now. And Zakk, how are you doing?
Welcome aboard, Zakk.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me back.
No problem, man. This show is a little bit different than the Big Plantation show we had you on last time. This one's a little bit free form. This one is discussion driven. And I just, from the conversation that we had gotten to have with you last Sunday, I was very intrigued with a lot of subjects, a lot of things I'd love to get your feedback on. I don't want to come across like I set you a homework assignment with that C.S. Lewis shit. That's not what I was trying to do. But I would hope you would check out some of that stuff just because of the philosophy involved, and I would love a mind like yours matched up with a mind like that. Certainly somebody who formed the Socratic society. But at Cambridge or Oxford, one of those UK colleges, I don't know. I always screw up the mundane facts. That's usually Jamie's department. But just to give a quick update on yourself to my co-host here, Doc Risk, the yin to my yang, and the shark to my Fonzie in my jumpings. Please give Doc an explanation of what it is that you are pursuing through your studies, your book, and your future goals with what we discussed on Sunday.
Okay, yeah. My book is separate from my work. Ancientwisdom.co.uk is actually my colleague's, Alex's website. So, yeah, he'd probably get mad if I claimed it as mine. But I write articles for him, and our eventual goal, as I was telling you last time, is to set up ancient wisdom centers. One would be in the UK, one would be in the US, and eventually other places. And what it would be for people to come together, people to learn from themselves, from the ancients. We're also going to be replicating ancient technologies, things like that. And just a whole bunch of cool stuff that we haven't, made public yet, but we're still working on behind the scenes. And a couple things that we're doing this year, we're actually going to Bosnia. We're going to Göbekli Tepe, and we're going to do some investigations. Of course, the Bosnian pyramid is completely dividing everybody. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing right now. A lot of people dismiss it as hoax, and I'm not sure where I stand on it yet, but we're going to be going there. But yeah, that's basically it. I mean, we want to create basically a ripple outwards that'll make people remember who we are. We as humans really don't have an identity anymore, and it's sad.
Well, Zakk, on what you just mentioned there, I'll just throw one random one. There's millions of them that I would love to go back and forth with you on and just get your opinion on. But specifically, there was recently a discovery of an underwater pyramid. I believe it was off in Greece.
Portugal. Are you talking about Portugal, or are you talking about the Azores?
I believe it was Portugal. I'm mistaken for Greece right now and recalling it. But, yes, it was the Portugal one where the fishermen found it. What's your take on that? Does that hold any water?
Unfortunately, it's been dismissed due to the radar that the fishermen had. The radar that the fishermen had was inadequate, so to speak. So what appeared on his screen looked like a pyramid structure. But when the Navy investigated, they found it was just, in fact, natural rock formation. Now, you can take a couple things away from that. You can be like, okay, that sounds rational, that his detector wasn't good, or you could also go the other route of something's being hidden. I'm naturally a skeptic, so I'm going with the fact that it's probably just natural.
Okay. Well, I'm a big Plato fan. I've taught lots of Socrates. I even take the stance sometimes just for the argumentative philosophical side of my brain to say that Socrates was no more than a teaching device that Plato used, because Socrates never actually wrote anything himself. He's only a reference in a lot of Plato's stories as one of his understudies, really, and was used as a teaching mechanism. Now, this brings me to the historical evidence of Atlantis and a reference of Atlantis outside of Plato. Do you know of any direct references outside of Plato for Atlantis? And if so, or if not, can it stand to reason that Atlantis was no more than just that, a teaching mechanism used by Plato?
Wow, that's a good question. I tend to lean towards, and of course this is just my opinion, I tend to lean towards the idea that Atlantis was not a city. If it was ever real, Atlantis was a continent. And I believe that after the Ice Age, that a large body or mass could have been submerged. To be honest with you, I really can't remember any other quoting or evidence, so to speak, of Atlantis that any other cultures, would have left behind. The only real thing that I could, pull from memory would be the Minoans. Are you familiar with them?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Okay, so the Minoans are a pretty recent discovery. I can't remember exactly when they were unearthed, but they're a very interesting culture. You can see references of Sumeria or Mesopotamia in them as far as bull worship. It was a very kind of Greek culture, a little bit more promiscuous, I would say. And what's really interesting is we still really don't know where they came from. Are you familiar with Knossos, Greece?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we think that the Minoans came from Europe, and that's just due to DNA, but, I mean, that's just speculation right now. We don't know too much. But what's interesting about the ruins and why this might be tied to Atlantis is we see a lot of marine animal things. Like, for example, there's a very famous one that shows 4 dolphins, actually more if you look at the whole panel, but it shows 4 dolphins swimming, and you really don't see dolphins in Europe. That's really not something that you catch. So that's one of the things that could possibly prove it. Other than that, I really have never heard of anything else.
Now, you brought up a good point. I don't know if you were even making this point, but one that I took away from our conversation last week, which was a correlation between ancient societies' tales, and we're kind of leading into it here, where we can make the leap. Instead of finding a direct reference to Atlantis, we can find something that fits that model, so to speak, in other societies. And you were drawing correlations between something that I do often, which is say the Greeks' demigods to then the fallen angels of the Bible, or Mayan culture, and even then Egyptians, whereas someone like a Jordan Maxwell may use this as an opportunity to point out some massive hoax taking place instead of the opposite, which would be to use the C.S. Lewis type philosophy. And again, I don't want to confuse you with the C.S. Lewis conversation. I'm not talking Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm talking Screw Tape Letters, and I'm talking his speeches at Oxford, the actual philosophical side of him. But again, to take a point of view like a Jordan Maxwell, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but to take it and go, see, this is clearly evidence then of fraud, of stealing the story of Osiris, of stealing, stealing all these stories, plagiarism, instead of saying it's pointing to a universal truth that was once always known. And this, again, is going into a C.S. Lewis philosophy, which is that these philosophies have always been inherently within people. Cultures separated within or by thousands and thousands of years and thousands of miles somehow have these similar tales. Wouldn't that instead point to almost a universal truth, which then manifests itself through the Christian New Testament, through that rebirth, which is the metaphor in which the New Testament is delivering that with a new philosophy, which is not replicated anywhere. You're not going to find the teachings of Jesus in the story of Osiris. You understand what I'm saying here? What is your take on that?
On basically the cross-culturality of religion?
Right.
Is what you mean? Okay. Well, like I said the last time, I believe that there is that one source. Of course, I can't prove it yet, but we're getting close. For example, you can see a lot of, or it all breaks down to religious procession. Take, for example, the goddess figure like Venus, the Gaia, Mother Earth. If you look back between, we just posted this on the Facebook, Ancient Wisdom, 33,000 BC to 6,000 BC, you have the same figure. It is literally the same, has not changed, and it's found all over the world. Are you familiar with the rather plump goddess that I'm talking about, or do you want me to describe it?
Who are we talking about? Are you talking about Buddha?
No. What? Somewhat similar in weight proportion, but
right.
What it was just the sacred Mother Earth, or sometimes Venus. But the figure has been found, like I said, between 33,000 to 6,000 BC. It looks exactly the same, same belief system between them. Now, that can be found with a lot of other things. Serpent worship. The earliest known religion that we are aware of today is of the Sand people in Africa. And what they worshipped was they worshipped the serpent creator. It's really, really fantastic.
Now, does that predate the Sumerian culture?
Oh, yeah. 80,000 BC. That's well into the Paleolithic period.
Wow.
When you're talking,
what is the I'm really intrigued by that. What are the artifacts that were actually for that? Explain it a little bit. What we derived that they believed.
Well, the research was done by a female archaeologist. I can't remember her name. I can look it up here in a second. But what she found was this huge effigy of a serpent, and it was actually directly carved into the mountain. It's massive. You'd have to see a picture of it. There's another way for me to describe it. It's very crude, of course, of 80,000 BC, or I'm sorry, 70,000 BC. It's very crude, but you can make out the snake. It's really phenomenal. You can just go to Google and look it up. I wish I could describe it better, but as far as any artifacts, from what I remember from the story, there was no other artifacts found near that site. But that's how she determined it was the religion. I can't actually remember if I'm trying to remember. I apologize. Let me see if I can look it up.
No, that's fine. That's still intriguing enough for me to try to research and look up. I'm really into those types of things, and especially with your excessive knowledge on the subject of ancient cultures and ancient, I would use the term mystery schools. Would you be all right with using that term? Do you know where I'm going with this then?
Yeah, you can keep going.
in the tradition of Egypt, there's been a lot of times people point to things like the Illuminati now, or Freemasons and the keepers of this ancient knowledge. Now, clearly, when people make the claim that people are taking the all-seeing eye, for example, and then adopting only what the Illuminati of the dark end of this is saying instead of the traditional Egyptian meanings for it, in my opinion, they're missing the point, which is that these new continuers of these traditions, what they did was basically do a hip-hop remix, okay?
Yeah.
They take a little bit from this culture and a little bit from that culture, all the dark, quote-unquote, arts, if you would, the continuing secrets, and it starts in Freemasonry with the keeping of the trade, and that's how they begin keeping secrets. Well, it becomes knowledge that they're keeping, and this is what's represented then through the capstone and the pyramid, and the little wink in the symbolism. And we could go on all day, but the truth of the matter is what you're looking at when you're seeing all these modern-day occultists, this is a term that we tend to use, you're seeing a combination of Egyptian magic or Egyptian traditions laid against Latin traditions. I mean, Novus Ordo Seclorum is Latin. It's a dead language. I mean, our language is derived from it, but it's using that Latin bit. And the disconnected pyramid is nowhere in Egyptian culture. That is 100% a Freemason, or therefore an Illuminati symbolism. So the remixing of these things. Now,
well, you have to keep in mind, real quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but when the Illuminati, so to speak, were organized, a lot less was known about Egypt back then. So you do have to keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely, but Freemasonry, it could be argued, the traditions of Freemasonry and where these ideas were coming from, that's not really as clear as I certainly wouldn't trust the History Channel 2 documentary on it. But that being said, there certainly is the attempt to keep some sort of knowledge away from people who aren't in the special club, so to speak. And these are a continuation there of tradition. Now, not to put yourself in a spotlight, but me personally, I know that I am fully aware of the good in the world and therefore the evil. In fact, again, to borrow from C.S. Lewis, the good cannot exist. In fact, free will would not be possible without evil, because you must have that free will to voyage through this to make your decision. So in order for that to happen, there must be evil. And then no one's going to deny that there's evil going on. Now, what some people may try to fight is whether or not there's this secret cabal who believes that they can harness energy through all these things. Now, your research in ancient cultures, what did you find about the Egyptians' knowledge of, say, ley lines and harnessing of energy? And what is the point of an obelisk? Or why the pyramid? And was the pyramid an energy source? And what don't we know about Egyptian technology?
Yeah, that's a lot of speculation. But here I can tell you what we do know. The oldest example of use of electricity would probably be copper vases that were electroplated with silver. That was in the Baghdad Museum, and they were excavated from Sumerian sites in southern Iraq. Now, as far as ancient Egypt, there have been electroplated objects as well in the 19th century, and also places like India, South America, of course Greece. Greece had a lot of ancient technologies as well. We were talking last time about the Baghdad batteries.
Right.
They simply just couldn't, produce enough electricity. As far as like the obelisks and stuff like that, I wouldn't want to say either way, just because I haven't seen any evidence of that. I do think it's possible, and I do think that
you wouldn't argue their fundamental, I don't want to use the word obsession, but it quite literally was in ancient societies an obsession with astronomy. And I mean, they didn't have television to pull their brain out of them, so they definitely had some sort of belief in harnessing energies and the importance of locations and correlation.
True. But we have to remember, as far as the obelisk, it was probably a phallic symbol. The phallus, to say it nicely, has been a symbol all back into the Paleolithic area, all the way back to 20,000 BC. We've seen it, depicted on numerous, like Lascaux Cave, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that it could be. I mean, that's why I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it is this or it is this. But it really
what would you think would be the reason for America to purposely replicate it?
That's a good question. And if you'll also notice, the Vatican replicated it. And also at the Vatican is the pine cone, or the so-called pineal gland. Yes, and that pineal gland, what's really interesting is it's been found in Egypt, it's been found in the Indus Valley, it's been found in Mesopotamia, it's been found in the Americas, although the Americas are now known to have been seeded by the Egyptians and Mesopotamians and probably some other cultures, so it's not really that spectacular. But
in the
what about
Grand
the fact that the Eye of Osiris actually is a perfect map of what the pineal gland would look like if you cut somebody's head open?
I have seen that analogy, and I think it is a pretty interesting coincidence. Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting.
And so there's certainly winks in our common culture, and we can definitely all agree that there's a tradition being kept with ancient traditions that 99% of the population have no idea about.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And what you have to realize...
Go ahead.
What you have to realize is, how many people do you know that can recount the past 100 years. If you walked up to somebody on the sidewalk and asked them, do you know what Prussia is? What do you think their response would be? People have
Russia.
Yeah, people have such a short attention span, and also people are they're concerned about instant gratification. And so, as long as, like you said, as long as I've got my TV, why would I want to open that book? Why do I care what's in that book? And so people just believe what they're told. They believe that, it used to be, no ancient civilization had contact. Okay, that was disproven. No ancient civilization had technology. That was disproven. Ancient civilization was dumb. Really? They charted the stars better than we can today.
Exactly.
So some of the cultures. So
they had no TV to distract them from it, from knowing everything. They had a way better timekeep than we did. I mean, we have a leap year as testimony to our lack of understanding of timekeep.
Did you know that the Egyptians actually created?
What do you think the reason is then that this information is being suppressed and that we're being led to believe that if you were a civilization in the past, you were stupid, and that there's no way their technology or their mental capacity could even be compared to ours now? What's the reason for suppressing that information?
That's a good question. Let's go back to as far as we know, and I encourage everybody, listening to look up the Vincan Empire or the Old Europe Empire, because it's really pretty interesting, the correlations we can take until today. That culture specifically had the earliest protoscript, which predated cuneiform, so it had writing, it had religious temples, it had religious holy texts, had a city grid, okay? We have no evidence that they were even a warfare culture. Most of the cultures we know are based on war, and especially if you look at the Sumerians and of course onward down into the Egyptians, the Greeks, all that. So what made that change? What made it to where people went from the mother or the woman lunar worship to the solar male phallic worship? And of course, with the solar male phallic worship comes all kinds of violence, terrible things that happen. Quite frankly, I wish women were still in power. They'd probably do a better job. I think the reason that all this is happening, or is happening right now, I guess I should say, is because it's been happening since 4,000 or 5,000 BC. Nobody, at least the large population of people on this earth, either can't fight back, don't have the will to fight back, or don't want to fight back. I mean, how many people do you know in your daily life that you truly don't know, stranger, do you think would actually take up arms against the government if they were to abolish the Second Amendment or something? Not too many people. Unfortunately, when you really think about it, the so-called innocent people really aren't too innocent. I mean, we all have to stop this. It's been happening for thousands of years. I don't know why. They could be harvesting something. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of theories out there. Some of the theories are that even prayer releases some kind of energy that can be captured. I mean,
absolutely. And you brought a great point right there, and I want to ask your opinion on this. Knowing that the power of prayer or consciousness, just in general, and when you see a move on to dehumanize, or rather pull the spirit and animalistic characteristics become the explanation, a slow evolution to the point of consciousness, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You don't see any other animal display consciousness on the level to create art and language. You just don't see it. So I can't see either where consciousness becomes a pro-evolutionary step according to Darwinism at all, because if you're sitting around thinking, you're just becoming prey to another animal.
Sure, no, I understand. I mean, when you break it down, we're animals, We defecate like animals, we mate like animals, but we have a, what I call my book, the God Fragment. And the God Fragment that we have, Hermes said it best. Hermetic texts are amazing. I encourage anybody to read them. Hermes said that the magic for humans, I'm paraphrasing, of course, the magic for humans is the creation of music and art. The magic of God is creation of man. And of course, that that's dated anywhere between 1,000 to 500, even probably earlier, maybe 200 BC. So that idea has been around for a while. But, I mean, you're right. Look at us. We are completely different. We're not built for this planet at all. That's why I argue that there was some kind of intelligent design. You know, I'm, like I said last time, I'm definitely not an ancient aliens theorist, but I see so many intricate connections between the essences of each religion. We're too busy letting differences divide us. If we could all...
And you have such a clear view of these ancient societies then, and all these different sects or cults, if you will, some of which derive their energy source from dark areas. They believe in bad shit, all right? And if
South America, Mesoamerica type.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, black magic, for one, has existed for a long time. Now, if I had a belief structure that I believed to know this divine truths, and that I could control people by their not knowing these divine truths, I would employ these tactics that are being done on the human psyche right now. A, pull their consciousness away, devalue their life. This is all in Marx's book, by the way. Karl Marx wrote very poetically about how to create the perfect Marxist society in which the state was the god. First step was creating a doctrine of atheism, which we have happening, perpetrated by our science, which has become, you know, the god of this state-run religion. Now, at the same time, I see this undercurrent of still holding true to those ancient black magic, if you will, occult, ritualistic type things. When we know about Bohemian Grove continuing, I mean, you talk a lot about Baal, and Moloch is still current day being worshipped as a deity. And it's by the most powerful people in our country, in our world, through the Bohemian Grove. These are continuing to go on right under the nose of people. So when knowing what, I don't know how much you know about black magic and all that, but knowing what I know about it, if I wanted people to unknowingly give me their source of energy, I would put my emblems on something and then create unknowing worship amongst people who didn't know. So all their attention and focus was on that. And we quite literally have these black magic tarot cards, each of us in our wallet. And this is clearly the focus and the point of all control over our society at this point. Do you see any possibility or any correlation between all of these ancient combination of symbols and language and hidden things as a potential way that those who were in control were unknowing to us, making people worship their deities, if you will, or harness their energy then?
Well, it could. I could see it possible as far as Christianity, Catholicism, things like that. I think, this is my opinion, I think that it is more monetary driven. I think it's more status driven. I think it's more possession driven. I don't know if it's so much, you know, I can't prove that prayer or spirituality causes any kind of effects other than, you know, a personal experience. I can't prove that. But what I think is, what I know is going on is the same systems that have been around since Mesopotamia, possibly even earlier, as far as like you were talking about credit cards, coins. Jesus famously said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's." So it's always been known that money is government. You know, money is a system of control.
And just real quick, I want to side note, because Jamie is on with us here, and he knows how important that Jesus quote is to me, because I get into debate with people a lot on this subject, because what my perception of that statement is a tactical statement by somebody who is being trapped to break the law at the current time, to be stopped because a revolution was nearly rising of enslaved Israelite people, to the Roman Empire, and those that would want him to slip up were setting a trap. And when he says, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and give unto God what is God's, it's a clever parable that is saying nothing is Caesar's. Every other word from Jesus' teachings said that God is everything. Give the poor, blessed are the poor. Money is nothing. Every single teaching is about blessed are the poor and, give to the needy and this and that. So when he says give to Caesar what is Caesar's, he's saying give Caesar nothing because money is nothing. And this is like a major misconception with a lot of times because it's used to say that Jesus was saying just pay your taxes. I get told all the time, my mom, Jesus said you had to pay your taxes. Like, Jesus didn't have to deal with a fucking income tax taking 30% away. That's not what he's saying.
Yeah, Jesus, when he said that, was saying that money is not important to God. So that story, and the story of the rich young ruler that decided not to follow Jesus because he said to Jesus, what do I need to do to follow you? Jesus said, sell all your possessions, have nothing, then you can follow me. And he made the decision, my possessions, my earthly possessions that I can't take with me when I die are more important. I've heard there's a new theory out. There always is a new theory about how Jesus didn't exist and all this kind of stuff. And I've heard that story, yes, you said it, that it was used to show Jesus was created simply to perpetuate the Roman Empire, and especially their control, and to stop the revolution that was happening at the time. So, I mean, I
would love to jump in right here with your own point, which is the Roman Catholic Church. Because what you have in the tradition that we were just talking about, which is the combination of things, then the assimilation of the Roman people is how it's painted to us. Well, we're going to take all this pagan tradition, blend it with Christianity through Constantine, and that way it's palatable to the Roman Empire. They didn't give a fuck what was palatable to the people of Rome. They didn't care. That's not what was taking place. In fact, the glorification of the Virgin Mary, as you poetically stated the last time we had you on, that has nothing to do with Christianity at all.
It's complete heresy. Complete heresy.
Right. And they took, through Catholicism, the ideals of Christianity and just jammed it with a whole bunch of shit that would be all a part of traditions that were, forbidden in the Old Testament, let alone the New Testament.
And what you're saying right now is very important because religion is a vehicle of control. For example, there's Catholics, there's Protestants, there's Eastern Orthodox, there's Oriental Orthodox, there's Anglicans, there's non-Trinitarians, there's Nestorians, there's Gnostics, there's Coptics, there's Rosicrucians, and within those main branches of Christianity, there are thousands of denominations. Each one of them believes differently. Each one of them.
Exactly, and you brought up two important ones, Rosicrucians and the Gnostics, because the Gnostics' belief can arguably be the furthest away from any of the teachings of Jesus, and it was actually then pulling from all these old traditions of occultists, frankly. Where do you see, I know your expertise is mostly in ancient, but the establishment of the Satanic Church, okay, and the beliefs of what it is they believe in, but also the elitist beliefs, the beliefs of their divine bloodline, and therefore all of this occult symbolism popping up and really being pushed through pop culture right now, what with the covering of the eye constantly. Whether it's playing with it to sell magazines, at this point, you can't watch a Jay-Z video and you can't watch a Rihanna video without recognizing that they are portraying very, very dark imagery, and it is becoming commonplace. What's your take on that?
That's a broad spectrum. Let me start with symbolism of the church. Is that okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So the first technical church was of Constantine. after the Council of Nicaea, after he united the two empires. So
right, he sent his mother to go and look. And
what's interesting is the symbol that he chose to represent himself. He had all of his soldiers place a chi rho, which was the name, on their shields. Now, that was a combination of a stylogram, which was a tau, an Egyptian tau, superimposed on a rho, which was the P symbol, and it was also a monogram, which were the Greek letters for Jesus and Christ. So when you look at ancient Egypt, in ancient times, the tau actually represented life or resurrection. In ancient Egypt, the tau was also part of the Ankh. Now, it was used in a lot of different legends, but it was mostly associated with Osiris or the rogue pharaoh Aten. I'm sorry, Akhenaten, not Aten. Aten was the god. And if you look at the Bible, it also talks about Egyptian influence. Now, right down the road from my house is a Catholic church, St. Michael's, and they have this exact, they have a chi rho on a shield right in front of their church. How many people do you think walk in every Sunday and see that and know what that means? It's literally a combination of the first way to say Jesus in an ancient Egyptian symbol. It's ridiculous. Now, there's a lot of other symbolism as well, like the sun ray diadem. The sun ray diadem was his second symbol that he chose. And we can see this diadem all the way back into ancient Sumeria, especially Egypt. So, it's crazy. It's crazy what people really don't know. Did that answer your question? Did I miss anything?
No, that's awesome. How much do you look into common day, like the purpose, for example, for the Great Seal? Why they chose to pull from all these ancient ideas? Why was there so much Masonic influence in the symbolism being used in the carving of our most held, logos, if you will? But also, like, the number 13 constantly reappearing, and the tradition from the Knights Templar then being continued. Where do you see? Do you look into that at all, or do you see any of those correlations being relevant?
I see the correlations, but up until you mentioned anything, all I really perceived was it was somebody that thought it was cool, so they emulated it. Specifically, like Egypt. Egypt's really been the staple. I mean, not too many people have known about Mesopotamia. So usually the quote-unquote satanic or stuff like that comes from ancient paganism, which would be like Norse, Germanic paganism, even some Druidish paganism, and then, of course, Egypt. So I
things, of course, I subscribe to.
Yeah. Well, looking into, like, the Luciferians, for example, who Alex Jones so famously was titling anybody who was taking part with the Bohemian Grove practice. Just the fundamental philosophy of these people, which is that they will be able to go to heaven using these ancient, and heaven is on earth, or they're going to have eternal life here on earth. This is where you get into the technocracy idea, the worship of, right, exactly. And you can see then that these ideals would be from a foundation, a base of belief, a core structure of secret beliefs that they hold on to. I would argue that these weren't just random symbols thrown together. That would go against logic for all the reasons that these ancient cultures would have used those symbolisms. They held that shit sacred. They didn't just randomly map out the stars and go, you know what, we're going to have a calendar, but we're not going to be serious about all our deities. They really believed that shit. And without going into it too deep, we have constantly been studying in real time as things like, Doc, help me, where's the girl in the water tower? Doc? We lost
I think Doc
All right.
actually dropped, yeah.
Okay, we lost our co-host, but there was this girl who was found dead in a water tower. It identically mocked the whole black water tradition through black magic, which was the idea of poisoning people through the practice of letting a body deteriorate in water. This is like poisoning the well. This is where that whole terminology came from.
Is her name.
Yeah, Elisa Lam, thank you. Which also happens to be the name of the test in reverse for TB. And whoops, there was a tuberculosis outbreak immediately following that. These types of things, which are chronicled best by VigilantCitizen.com, who I constantly give notoriety to because dude does his research, breaks things down for you. It is clear to those who have researched or are watching in real time, as I like to say, as they play out these ancient pagan traditions, no offense, Jamie, but a lot of it's derived from pagan beliefs. And these deities, which we've already discussed, Baal, who appears in the Bible, and Moloch, who appears in the Bible in the Old Testament, explaining these deities have been around forever. They're still around. Okay, yeah. And I don't know, are you familiar with the Bohemian Grove and Alex Jones's famous crashing of the party, if you will, in which he documented what's actually taking place, which is mock human sacrifice and the ushering in of gay porn stars or children to service them, like real crazy fucking shit. And look no further than universities commonly with Penn State and whatnot, or the secret practices of the fucking straight-up evil Catholic Church, which has a tradition of secrecy while molesting children, which occultists believe gives them the most purest form of energy. So now, if they believe all this type of shit in the tradition of it, why would we second-guess their use of symbolisms everywhere, almost like a gang throwing up gang signs? And does their beliefs hold any water? And if so, what is the opposite of that? How do you combat these dark forces they worship?
So basically, in order to talk about this, we have to legitimize that they're in existence.
We would have to, at very least, say they believe this.
Okay, that's fine. They believe it. Well, let's look at a serial killer, for example. You know, if what was his name? Oh, man. The Zodiac Killer, for example.
Right.
I wonder what he believed. He acted out what he believed, and what he believed probably wasn't even real. So that may be what's going on here. Even back into ancient times, my theory, of course, is that all myths originate from one source and that there was intelligent design. But I think that all the ancient religions were actually like the Catholic Church today, and they were cults, or they were distortions of the truth.
Man's attempt to make himself God is what a religion winds up being.
When I go to church, I'm looking at a man talking to me, telling me what God says. That's what happens when I go to church. So I think that's what happened in ancient times. I think that there is a universal truth. I think that we're getting close to finding that truth. But I think that the people like you're talking about, I think they simply just have a wrong belief. And you can see, I mean, the Bible has a lot of accurate prophecy. However butchered it is, it has a pretty interesting accurate prophecy that can be taken out of Revelation. Interesting side note, the book of Revelation was actually side to side in comparison with the Apocalypse of Peter, which was not chosen. It was considered a Gnostic gospel. We can talk about that later, whatever. But there's a lot of other things that show that it could possibly be just falsehood. And you can see that in the dogma of the church.
Absolutely. The book of Judas has been I don't trust carbon dating for shit. But either way, the book of Judas wasn't dated back far enough for them now to give it relevancy. I think the book of Enoch belongs in there. I don't understand why it wouldn't be.
Absolutely, the book of Enoch.
That just shows you why the organized formation of a religion would try to keep certain knowledge and truth away for the purpose of control. Now, we don't have much time left. We're in our last 8 minutes here. And, again, we could go on all day with this. I love talking with somebody who's as knowledgeable as you are. I'm going to use the last few minutes here to plead with you to to listen to some of, in fact, I'm going to add you on Facebook after our conversation. I'm going to force you to listen to it.
Okay.
They've taken a lot of some of the speeches that C.S. Lewis gave while teaching at Oxford, and they were transcribed. And then what they have is an actor speak it, and they have this awesome artist draw out just interpretation. It's perfect for people with ADD like me. Keeps my attention just good. So, but why he is important for you is because C.S. Lewis, not the caricature carved by history, but the human being, the person, his spiritual journey, and then therefore understanding consciousness, that the path in which he took and the words in which he uses to express it, somebody with your need and yearning to dig and find on the level that you have, C.S. Lewis will become this amazing philosopher to add to your arsenal of thought process. That's the way I would explain it. Much like I use Socrates and Plato constantly, C.S. Lewis is quickly becoming my favorite philosopher, just for deducing. And his primary thesis is the proving of intelligent design. He proves it more eloquently than anyone I've ever heard. And he uses all that same doctrines that became our holy doctrine of science, because he was contemporaries with those who were carving the universities in America at the time. He wasn't that much far removed from Darwin himself, and he brutalizes Darwin in a completely intellectual way.
Yeah,
and from a 100% philosophical standpoint, that's why it's important for you to read, armed with as much knowledge as you have. And with our last few minutes, I just want to give you the mic and plug again for our listeners that don't know what it is you're working on one last time.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'd definitely love to check that out. Well, once again, I am the co-director of the Ancient Wisdom Foundation. We're just starting out. We started out actually in October doing the Facebook thing, made it official on the 21st of 2013. Since then, we've got about 12,000 likes. So a lot of people are really liking what we have to say. And I keep, of course, my personal religious research separate from the foundation. But eventually what we're going to do, we are looking for some help. I mean, we need some article writers. You know, we need specifically a marketer, because we are becoming a legitimate foundation. And eventually what we're going to do, we're going to build up the website a lot more. We're most importantly going to keep it free, and you can view it at ancient-wisdom.co.uk. And eventually, like I said, we're going to have the Ancient Wisdom Centers in the U.S., UK, other places, where we're going to focus on free knowledge, free learning, especially things like preserving the earth, ancient technologies, anything that's going to lead us in the right direction. And unfortunately, like I said, in order to do that, we do need a little bit of help.
Absolutely. And everybody out in the research and teaching, really, because that's what you're looking to do, in that field, that is all based on people who believe in what you're doing and therefore are willing to help you achieve what you're doing because they believe in it. So
this is on record.
That's why we're heading on again. It is on record. Thank you, Jamie. I want to throw, we have only a couple minutes left. I want to throw rapid-fire questions at you. You ready?
Sure.
I've actually watched a documentary where a man set out to prove that he knew how the pyramids were built. He used some wooden planks. He showed how the sides of the ancient chambers were perfectly suited and actually had marks and residue left from the wooden planks that were used to move these ginormous boulders or blocks, if you will, into a perfect. Where do you feel that theory holds water? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about, or do you have a different thesis on how the pyramids were built?
I have seen that before, and I think that a lot of the theories that got put forth are substantial and could be plausible. But I do want to quote, even though I don't like him, I want to quote Zali Hawass. He said, I believe it was 1996, to the Egyptian press, there are this is paraphrasing, there are secret tunnels under the Sphinx and around the pyramids, which will prove to carry many secrets of the building of the pyramids. And
that
actually,
is an Edgar Casey quote.
I'm sorry?
Edgar Casey. I don't know if you're familiar with him. The seer.
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, he predicted that we would find the lost treasures of Atlantis under the paw of the Sphinx. He predicted that in 1922.
No, I don't. Zakk Whitman used to be the curator for a lot of the Egyptian antiquities.
I subscribed to the conspiracy theory that he was one who raided during the riots the Egyptian Museum of Art.
Oh, I would believe it. He did enough to distort the truth already, especially with National Geographic. I could talk about that for hours.
Absolutely. Well, how about the Sphinx? Did the Sphinx originate in Egypt, and if not, where?
Oh, man, I have no idea. I subscribe to the idea that it is Egyptian, but I do note the erosion marks around the base of the Sphinx, and I do see the plausibility that the head of the Sphinx is not the original head.
Mm-hmm. The Shroud of Turin. Go.
Wow, you are firing them. The Shroud of Turin, my personal belief is that I hope that it's real.
I'm using carbon dating. Go ahead.
Carbon dating, I mean, to me, my opinion, carbon dating is relatively reasonable as far as foolproof, but of course, anything's possible. I think that if it's real, we'll never know. But I like to hope that it is.
Constantine's mother's voyage into Israel to find relics, finding parts of the supposed cross buried then in the church.
That's it. John Calvin famously stated, if we collected all of the relics of the cross, we would be able to build Noah's Ark. And yet Jesus Christ was able to carry his cross.
Absolutely. And there's a poetic, philosophical metaphor you just built in there in words that I'm going to have to take a couple hours to write out in a poem. Well, this is the end of the show. Thank you, Zakk, and we want to have you on again 100 times. I'm going to keep picking your brain. I got a whole bunch more. Just make sure you go read some C.S. Lewis.
All right, I got you, buddy. Just let me know and add me and send me that stuff.
Thank you. And Jamie Martin, you still there, bro?
Oh, I'm still here, Moses.
I love you, Jamie. I love you because you're special and you're different from everyone else.
I made Jamie a promise that we would talk about the paganism in the church a little more detailed. So we got to do that.
All right, next show, because I'm very schooled in that, and me and Jamie have had big conversations with it, and we did it for our Christmas special because
we did.
Perfect.
Just to devastate my family, I guess. But thank you to those who listen. Peace out from the Coast Nation.
Connecticut, we stand with you.
We stand with you, Connecticut. Jamie does anyway, and Jamie will give his address to the NSA after the show.
No matter what happens, we must stand together. We gotta find common ground and build. If we stand together, we can overcome this. But let's not lose focus on why we here. It's plain as day, look around, use logic and you'll see. It's a sea of lies you're floating in disguise as prophecy. They feed you propaganda to make you riot in the streets, but we know that's what they want. Of course that thought is obsolete, we come in peace. But don't mistake it when we say it, push the people far enough. Revolution's where we take it, the establishment is shaking. Mass murder in Aurora, and you know they had to stage it, cause you're gonna wanna take it. If we wait until they do, it'll be too late to change it. But it's not impossible, our fate is what we make it. I said our fate is what we make it. See, it's not impossible, cause our fate is what we make it. What brought you here doesn't matter why you're still here. What brought you here doesn't matter why you're still here. What brought you here doesn't matter why you're still here. We can disagree, it doesn't mean that we can't build here. What brought you here doesn't matter why you're still here. What brought you here doesn't matter why you're still here. What brought you here doesn't matter why you're still here. We can disagree, it doesn't mean that we can't build here. And if my legacy is what it's meant to be, you won't need my name, still you'll remember me. The statue at the Capitol, the chapter in your textbook, a speech at the rally, the rapper with the best hook, the next look, the trend-setting ex-crook, the one who got the rest shook. You doubt me, you best look at the bigger picture, you know it's getting clearer. I paint it with my scripture, I'm holding up the mirror, cause self-perseverance starts with your appearance. Reaching new heights, no longer worry about the clear. possible to impossible. The obstacles are great, but our will to fight is comparable. It's obvious our fate is nothing short of unstoppable.